Hi, I'm Eric Valentine, and you are watching the Audio Nerd Show.
Ciao ragazzi, siamo qui con un ospite pazzesco, incredibile, che ci racconterà un po' di cose e l'ospite pazzesco l'avete già riconosciuto, è Eric Valentine. Facciamo un applausissimo.
Abbiamo la regia anche.
we have the people screaming. Hi Eric, thanks for being here.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great. You're I'm sure all of our viewers know about you, but in case somebody was living under the rock, you are a great producer, sound engineer, mixing engineer, and everything that we will see in this interview. And you started as a musician. You were a drummer, right?
Yeah. Yep. I started off as a drummer. I started very young. I started playing drums when I was 5. Really pursued it with, a lot of passion for a long time. And eventually played in a variety of bands growing up. The first real serious band that I was in was a band called T-Ride. We ended up building a home studio to make demos for the band. The band eventually got signed. And the demos were convincing enough that the record company let us make the record ourselves. And, we put out a record. It was not the most timely release in the world because we were, a very sort of progressive hard rock kind of glam band type thing. Somewhere between like 9 Inch Nails and Def Leppard and whatever. And this album ended up coming out in like 91, and that was when grunge, emerged to really just replace the old guard of rock music.
Everything changed.
Yeah, and we got completely trampled in that transition, which is fine. Music is supposed to evolve and change. We were at the tail end of a particular style and genre of music, and if we were a little faster at making our record, maybe it could have been different. I think for the people that are familiar with the band, it was a very ambitious record that we made that I think was very unique in a lot of ways. So the people that did discover it, I think really appreciated the effort and vision that went into it. And, we still have, there's not a lot of them out there, but we still have very, very passionate T-Ride fans out there. It's
oh, really?
Yeah.
Any reunion soon?
I don't think that's possible. The ultimate sort of, breakup of the band was not particularly friendly.
Okay.
And so, for decades, there was just no way we were going to communicate. But the silence did finally break recently. I finally reached out. It was at a time when I was moving my studio from one place to another, from California to Vermont. And I still had hundreds of analog master tapes in storage at my place in California. And I didn't want to have to move them all to Vermont. And so, I made digital copies of everything. I archived everything with high resolution digital recordings. And then I returned the master tapes to everybody, who were really the owners of them. I was just keeping them safe. And so one of those people was Dan Arley, the singer from T-Ride. I didn't want or need these T-Ride tapes anymore, and so I wanted to return them to him. So I reached out to him. We, reconnected. He actually came to my place in LA. I gave him the tapes, so he has all of that stuff now. And I don't think there's any chance of us working together again. But it was good, to see him again and put all of that. The breakup of the band behind us, and
maybe it was about time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but when you're talking about the Los Angeles studio, you're talking about Barefoot, right?
Yes, Barefoot Recording. Yeah,
I remember I saw. Let's say that one of the first studio tour, you did it for Pensado's Place, and it
Oh
was
yeah,
barefoot.
yeah,
Remember? It was
yeah. I think
two
it was
episodes
the
of
thing called
Pensado's
Into the
Place.
Layer or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
was two divided into
Two parts.
Two parts. Yeah.
And I remember because it was the first time that I saw the drumbrella.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that you took the idea from Ocean Way, right?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
and
totally.
and you played the snare drum, moving the drumbrella and into the telephone or the computer was incredible because you could listen to it. Can you explain what the drumbrella is?
Sure, yeah. So it really does look like an umbrella, and
Yeah.
so which means that it has this sort of roughly parabolic shape. And so a parabola is a shape where it will focus reflections all into one point, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You'll see them on like a big, radar dish or, radio telescope dish, something like that, where it's just gathering a bunch of radio, information, and then it reflects it onto this one receiver in front of it. So it's that kind of a shape, and then it's up over the drum set, and so you can move it up and down, and those reflections get focused back into, the center of whatever you put under it.
Yeah.
And it creates this very dramatic focused reflection of off the height above whatever you're recording. And that height can have a dramatic influence on just what frequencies are being emphasized or canceled. The way sound propagates in a room and bounces around and reflects back, there's all these timing delays that will cause certain frequencies to either cancel out or get, reinforced and made
Yeah.
a lot louder. And so this gave you control over it. You could move this thing up and down depending on where you had the snare drum tuned. You could move it to a place and you'd hear it happen where all of a sudden the snare drum would sound really kind of thin and and all of a sudden it get really big and thick sounding when this thing fell into the right place to support the right frequencies that really made the snare drum sound really thick and heavy and supported.
And all the microphones around could benefit of it from it, or just the close mic?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. So there were different ways to approach it. So you could either, adjust it to make the drum itself sing,
Yeah.
so the drum really spoke more and just resonated more within the acoustic space, and the microphones would pick that up. Or you could adjust it to really optimize what a specific pair of microphones we're hearing. And so a lot of times for me, that would be the overhead mics,
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
really optimize what those are hearing. Because sometimes if you're in the wrong space with the wrong ceiling height and things aren't really set properly, the snare drum just sounds so thin and crappy in the overheads, and it makes it really difficult to get a great, snare drum sound. For me, I like to, only use the close mics just to kind of support the mics
So-
that are further away that sound more like real drums,
Because for you, the over drums is the drum sound, and then
Yeah.
you use the close mic to just announce a little bit what the overhead is catching, right?
Yeah, I like to lean more on the microphones that are further from the drum set,
Yeah.
because in my opinion, I've been playing drums for a long time, and you sit down at a drum set and play, I'm used to what that sounds like, for sure. And I don't listen to drums with my ear 1 inch from the drum head, it's
Yeah,
just not
of
what a
course,
drum sounds
of
like
course.
to me. And so I've always preferred that. Obviously there are limitations to that. It's nice to be able to have control over the balance of the drums with close mic because there's so much more isolation. And so that is helpful at times. And, the more you're using the microphones that are further away from the drum set, the more important it is how you play the drums, and that the internal
the
balance of the drum set is good, like that's where really, really incredible drummers start to be, really
Yeah.
important. You get somebody
Yeah.
like John Bonham, you can put a microphone anywhere in the room with
And it
that
will
guy,
sound
and it
great.
sounded
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
But that's why you started to record the drums without the cymbals, right? So you could
Yeah.
have the drum sound from all the mics around in the room without having the wash of the cymbals to come in, right?
Yeah, yeah, that, it's something that I had always done at times when it was necessary, like as I was working on the drums and recording the part, if I ran into a moment where it's like these cymbals are just going to totally destroy my room sound.
Yeah.
I just tell the drummer, just don't hit the crash cymbals. You can still play the hi-hat, but maybe don't hit those. And we just overdub those. So there were different versions of it. And then the most extreme and sort of most notable was on the Queens of the Stone Age record,
Yeah.
when we didn't record any cymbals at all with the drum set.
When Dave Grohl said, "Who the fuck was this fucking idea?"
yeah, whose fucking idea was this? He really just about lost it on that one, But yeah.
And in return, he broke your drum head, the snare head, right?
A drum head that had sounded great and lasted a very long time. Endured for a long time on a snare drum that just sounded wonderful. It was just this kind of crummy Pearl export 14-inch by 6-inch snare drum.
Yeah,
and it just always sounded great with this one head on there. So I just left it on there. It was on there for years. So.
But the record sound came out very, very good. And I remember that everybody was saying, "No, he was using samples in the drums. It's impossible to have this drum sound without samples." No samples on that record, right?
No samples. No.
Yeah,
definitely not.
That was a great record. We're talking about the Queen of the Stone Age. For those who don't know, those who were living under the rock before.
It's the Songs for the Deaf album.
Yes, and you tune the drums to the song. Is that right?
Yes, I always try to do that. Sometimes there may not be time to be that picky, or it doesn't really lend itself to that. But whenever possible, I always make an effort to do that. It's not a glaring difference, but it just adds this subtle additional musicality to everything that you're hearing when the drums, the toms, the snare drum are just, ringing in key with the song. Everything just sort of connects a little better, and it all feels more musical to me. So.
Yeah, and how do you decide? Like the snare drum is the tonic, and then you go for 4 or 5, or the kick drum is the.
Yeah, I mean, I'll mostly go for 1, 4, or 5, because those
and
notes.
One is the snare.
Not necessarily, because it depends on the key of the song, and if you want to have a low snare drum tuning or a high snare drum tuning. So those two factors. And so really what I do is I try and figure out, like, do we want this to be like a really low fat snare drum sound, or is this going to be like a more high crack snare drum sound? I get it so the snare drum is speaking in the register that we want, see what pitch it is, and then just try and nudge it to a note that will be in the key of the song.
In the key, okay.
Yeah, so I always start off trying to, thinking about the type of snare drum sound that I want first, and then I'll figure out, okay, what's the closest note that in this key that will work and still have the sound that I want,
Cool. Nice. And do you have the umbrella in your new studio?
I haven't set it up yet. I'm still getting to know this space. It's a big room. There's one complication with doing that. There's it's got a very high ceiling. It's a vaulted ceiling, but it's 30 feet all the way up to the ridge line of this vaulted ceiling. But below that, in order to make it so the whole building doesn't fall down, there's support beams that go across and a support beam that goes all the way the length. So I don't really have a clear shot all the way to the center of that. There's these support beams that are in the way that are only at about 14 or 15 feet. And so it would make it considerably less useful, if it had to be that low. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate around that, and still trying to figure out really where are the best places to put drums, in this room.
Okay.
And I don't get a huge amount of time to record, to like experiment and record. I did,
Mhm.
a whole round of just messing around and chasing the When the Levee Breaks drum sound, and
Yeah.
I've done a couple band recordings in here, but it takes a lot of time to really try every combination of drums in different positions in different parts of the room. I mean, there's so many places that I could put drums in this space, because there's also this mezzanine in there. So you could put drums underneath the mezzanine, or you could put them up on the mezzanine, or there's like this little cove on the far side of the room that is formed by these isolation booths. You could put the drums between those, or you could put it in the middle of the room. I mean, there's so many things to try, and it just takes time to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
More recently, the last round of recording that I did, I had some really cool discoveries where those overheads, or sometimes what I just call a drum kit mic, because it's just capturing the whole sound of the drum kit. I
Yeah.
found some positions for the drum set and the microphones in that little cove that were really great, really
Wow.
incredible. And so it was the first, like, okay, this is the thing that I know how to do now in this room, that I can just go back to and, use whenever I need it. And there's like a combination that's amazing for a lower tune snare, and there's a combination that's amazing for a higher tune snare,
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
You did so many famous records, Weezer, Third Eye Blind, Smash Mouth. Online, there's everything about this. I wanted to ask you about a couple of records that I really love, which are
Okay.
the Nickel Creek records.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah.
You did the third, fourth, and fifth, right?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to do 3 records with
3.
them, and
Yeah.
I just adore them. They're obviously unbelievably talented musicians.
Incredible musician. Chris
Yeah.
Tilly, is he crazy like it seems? As a person?
I would say he's probably the most virtuosic human being I've ever been in a room with.
He's incredible. He's
It's
incredible.
really,
Well,
really
in
astonishing to
that
watch
band,
what
there's
he's done.
also Edgar Meyer, which is
Yeah, yeah. I got to record Edgar on a couple of those projects, which was really fun. He's amazing. Also just inconceivably gifted, but just a really fun, great guy, that just
yeah,
shows up with really cool energy and this really adventurous spirit to try all kinds of crazy stuff. And, there's a point where you get to a level of musicianship where I think there's just a confidence in yourself that allows you to be more fearless and adventurous. Like, something good's going to happen.
yeah.
And so let's not overthink this. Let's just, fuck it. Let's just start playing and see what happens, and it's really fun to be around that. It's just
When you
awesome.
record that kind of talent, is it easier or harder?
Both.
Mm.
Because they, they're so good that it would be easy for me to just, every time they play something, go, that was great.
Yeah,
Another great take. Wow, that was incredible too, But that's not my job, to just
yeah,
sit there and tell them that they're great. You got to really, really listen. And in this case, really listen and
yes,
still challenge them as musicians. Hey, we could maybe do something cooler here, or that passage I think could be a little cleaner, or, something to really try and still push them. So you're capturing the very best of what is already the best.
yeah,
That's really what's important about those experiences. And it's tough, to try and listen and, critique things at that level, because it's such a high level.
yeah. And you had a different approach from the first one you did with them, which
Hmm.
I loved. The I will never remember the titles, but song number 2 and song number 10, it was incredible. But
Mm,
that record was more produced, overdubs, more guitars. The last
yeah.
record is live. There's the guitar on the right, there's the mandolin on the left, the violin, she's in the middle,
Hmm.
Edgar Meyer in the middle. It's a different approach. was that your idea? Everybody, their idea?
Yeah, I think, the first one for me, it was unavoidable that there was going to be a lot of experimentation because
Mm.
I had never made a bluegrass record before.
Yeah.
I really had no idea what I was doing at all. And, there were even times when, I was just struggling to capture the violin in a way that I really thought was, doing it justice, where I called, I asked if I could talk to the engineer that had recorded their previous records, who was an
Produced by
amazing
Alison
engineer.
Krauss, right?
Yes, he engineered the Alison Krauss records,
Yeah.
and I'm the worst person in the world because I'm blanking on his name right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our people are used to my blanks, so that's the problem.
let me just take 2 seconds and do this because
Yes,
I
sure.
want to remember his name. I believe his first name is Gary.
Those records were
Yeah, Gary Pachoza's his name. He's an incredible engineer, and he was incredibly
those
cool and
records
helpful.
were great. But
Yeah.
would you say that that's the Nashville sound and yours the Californian alternative rock sound? Like
Yeah,
the way to put the instruments in the spectrum. Yours is wider, is bigger.
Yeah. Yeah,
I like
and
it better.
it was very intentional. When I first met with Nickel Creek, I was happy to meet with them. I was surprised and delighted that they wanted to make a record with me, and we got together to sit down and talk about it. And the first thing I said was, "Why do you want to make a record with me? I don't know anything about bluegrass music. I don't listen to it. I've never recorded it. So why are we talking?" He said, they all just in unison were like, "That's perfect. That's what we're looking for."
Yeah.
We've already made these bluegrass records where everything is done exactly the way it should be. We want to make one where, we break all the rules. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, that sounds interesting.
Yes.
I'm ready for that, And so that's really what the first record was to, try and just do anything and everything that might be interesting and fun to try,
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of experimentation. I did a ton of experimentation to try and figure out how to capture them when they were all playing live together, and ultimately settled on something, towards the end of it that I really cemented for the two following records that I really feel like was the best way to capture that, that band. But
Yeah.
but
About
yeah,
the last. Oh no, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, so but that first one, we did all kinds of much more heavy-handed textural production type stuff to make it more of a surreal record than being just an accurate representation of the band in a room.
Yeah, yeah. Which is the last one? The last one is, I think, it's perfect. And
yeah,
I have a question about the last one. The
Sure.
guitar sound, the one on the right,
yeah,
which is the only guitar,
yeah.
is very different from the one before this one. This last one is one of the most beautiful guitar sound I've ever heard. Do you remember
okay.
how you recorded it? Not
Sure.
not that the one before it wasn't, but the one before was thinner, like if he had new strings and smaller strings and a little bit more compression. This one sounds like he had old strings, which I don't think so, but maybe yes. I don't know.
I think they were probably older strings. I think
okay.
their taste, definitely on the first record, they were using these strings that were coated, so they would last longer and stay bright longer and all this stuff.
Like
And
elixirs or
they were using stuff like that, and regularly changing strings and all this stuff, like all these kind of like more modern, practices of what is really the right way to do stuff. And I think they evolved over the 3 records that we made. And so, on the second record, yeah, because he on the first record he was playing, I believe, these Cowlings guitars.
Okay. Yeah.
Which are beautifully made guitars. They're very hi-fi sounding guitars.
Yes. I had 2 of them. In the previous
beautifully
years.
balanced. Very bright, articulate sounding guitars. By the second record, he had moved on from that. He had enough of just clean, perfect sounding guitars. There was this one particular Martin that he was very attached to. We used that pretty much for the whole record. And on the second record that I did with them, A Dotted Line, at that time I was really enjoying this one Shep's 221 condenser mic. It's like a pencil condenser. Just a very beautiful, balanced sounding microphone for acoustic guitar. I'd had one experience on the All American Rejects record where I used that mic on an acoustic guitar part in a song that really featured acoustic guitar. I recorded it with no EQ. When I mixed it, I didn't EQ it. And that particular song, when we mastered it, it didn't need any EQ. So that was like literally just the microphone on the guitar with nothing on it. There's maybe a little compression, but no EQ. Yeah. And it was just, very telling about how flattering that mic was on acoustic guitar. So I used that for the second record. It sounds like, a really nice condenser mic on acoustic guitar. And then this last record, I went much further in trying to get a real, a distinct sound for that record. And so we pretty much used ribbon mics for everything on that record. There's a couple of exceptions here and there, but that acoustic guitar that's in the right speaker is an RCA 77 DX. Along the way, not long before this, I just lucked into this person that was selling a pair of RCA 77s that were bought in the mid 70s, and they were used one time.
Wow.
And so I got these. They were still in the original box, had the original receipt. They look absolutely brand new, like you just pulled them out of the box, and they sound like it. They're just gorgeous sounding microphones. So that's what's on his acoustic guitar for pretty much that whole record.
The last one.
The last one. Celebrants.
And the guitar is the same Martin as the one before?
I believe so. I think he's stuck with that guitar. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I'm pretty sure it's the same guitar.
Okay.
And then,
when you mic the guitar, just one mic or you multi-mic?
In this case, it's just one mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I love one mic guitar.
Yeah, very focused because I'm really positioning instruments, in a stereo presentation. So, the mandolin's on one side, acoustic guitars on the other side. Yeah, just like you said. And the violins in the middle, their voices are in the middle. There's a little bit of panning, so you can hear a little bit of, positioning between their 3 voices. They do a lot of, harmony vocals together. And then everything, I had recently refurbished this RCA tube console from the 50s.
Yes,
and so all of the primary microphones, so close mic on the acoustic guitar, close mic on the violin, close mic on the mandolin, and all the main vocal mics all went through that RCA console. So really all of the primary sounds that you're hearing for all of the instruments went through that tube console. And so, this is a RCA BC2B tube console. Was made in 1952. It's the same model console that was used at Sun Studios to record Elvis Presley in the 50s and whatever, It really has a sound to it, and that was a huge contributor. Yeah.
And you record you EQ on the way in. And
I did. Compress? So the way it went, so that record was recorded at RCA Studio A in Nashville.
Okay. I thought it was in your studio in Vermont.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't do it here because it wasn't built yet.
Ah, okay, okay. It's that
Yeah,
old. Ah, okay.
it was still being built. We did some final overdubs of vocals and stuff at this place, but I had to
Okay.
use like a portable recording setup because the studio really wasn't put together yet.
Okay.
And so it was really all recorded at RCA Studio A, and which has a big, beautiful sound room, very similar to what I have here now in Vermont. That room is probably 40 feet wide, 70 feet long, with maybe 25-foot ceiling. An incredible room, and so I set them up in there, and everything would go through the RCA preamps, but then in order to assign things to tracks on a tape machine, it showed up on an API console. And so I would do
Okay.
a little bit of EQing on the API console. Those EQs are, great sounding EQs. They're very sort of just broad brush, I
Yeah,
just want to
yeah.
make this a little brighter or a little bassier or whatever, just very general tone shaping, and go through a little bit of compression, whatever, and I'd print it on the tape machine, and or it would print through the tape machine and get captured back into the computer.
You usually do this,
Yeah,
printing through the tape machine into Pro Tools. And
yes,
you also did the video. Let's talk. This is the right moment to talk about your videos, because you started a YouTube channel some years ago
yeah,
and doing great videos, and now you have a website where you put
yeah.
this kind of video, right?
Yeah, I ended up moving everything onto a website. It just was a lot easier to do the kinds of videos that I feel are the most useful to share with people,
Yeah,
where, they're longer videos, and I just cover all the details of really how to do something. And a lot of times I'm using source material that is owned by a major label, something like that.
and
And
on YouTube there's the strike,
yeah, on YouTube, that's become
copyright
a
strike.
huge
Yeah,
problem. It's
yeah,
really, really
yeah.
challenging for the people that have, that are doing that with YouTube
Rick
channels
Beato
now.
is very mad about this.
Yeah, I know. I really feel for him. He's such a good dude,
Yeah,
and he's amazing at what he
he
does.
is great.
And
Yes, yes,
they are
yes.
really making it difficult for him, and it
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just it's not cool. And so I'm sort of navigating around that a bit with my website, just because it doesn't have a large enough presence, to have anybody waste their time coming after me. So
Yeah,
um,
no, but you have an interesting way to give the videos, but because you don't make people pay a monthly fee,
no,
but just a really a ridiculous amount of money to watch the
yeah,
video, right?
yeah. The idea for the website is that you know I really want the videos to be accessible to everybody,
Yeah,
and so the what's charged for the videos is typically maybe only $1, $2,
yeah, which
$3.
is yeah,
Yeah, $3 for a 3-hour video. And so I didn't want the cost of the videos to even really be a consideration. And so if somebody's interested in watching it, they can go, oh yeah, I'll spend $2 to watch that,
yeah, of course, yeah,
And if I get enough subscribers to it, or members to the website, then it'll all work, where everybody that wants to participate
yeah.
in this community and watch these videos doesn't have to pay hardly anything for it. Everybody benefits from the low cost of it.
It's a win-win
And
situation. Yeah,
yeah, and it just makes it affordable for me to do it.
yeah,
I'm very fortunate. I've done well in my life. I don't need to make a lot of money off of this, or really any, but it's better for me to not actually be paying out of my pocket to do this.
yeah.
At a certain point, it
We
costs money.
understand well.
Yeah, and so I couldn't afford to just be paying to give away all of this information anymore.
Yeah, of
So,
course, of course.
and then really the long-term vision for this, if I can get the membership up enough, which is coming along. There's a really wonderful community of people that have signed up for this thing and enjoy it. And we have great, comment exchanges and follow-up videos, and I answer questions, and it just becomes a longer conversation about this experience of capturing sound and recording music. Ultimately, what I'd love to have happen is have enough people involved with this thing where I could bring in an unsigned artist into this studio and give them the kind of recording experience that isn't really available anymore, because so many of the larger studios have closed. I mean, I was just lucky. I started at the right time. I'm old, and like,
don't tell me.
and so, I was able to really put in a lot of time and effort in a time where you would really be rewarded for it. And so now I have this amazing studio. There's literally $1 million worth of recording equipment and instruments and stuff in this building. And, I would love to be able to offer that experience for an unsigned band, or even a band that's on an indie label or whatever, to come in and be able to record in an environment like this where there really aren't limitations. We don't have to like, oh, we're going to run out of time, we're going to run out of budget, because the record companies are struggling. They barely have money to pay to make records anymore. The artists everybody's struggling, because it's just, people have stopped really paying for music,
Yeah.
and so, or paying for recorded music. And so I could have a band come in here, hey, let's record a song or a collection of songs. We'll take as long as we want. I just want it to be amazing. That's the only thing I care about now. I want from here forward to make the most incredible recordings I've ever made in my life. That's what's interesting to me. I'm not really in the game of trying to sell the most records or get the most streams or any of that. I don't care about that crap anymore. I just want to make incredible sounding recordings. Have an artist come in to do that and document it all and be able to share that with people. And the band, like, I would split it with the band. We would get paid to do that. I mean, just imagine being an unsigned artist coming into a studio like this. You could spend a week recording a song and get paid to do it. It would be incredible.
This is a dream.
It is.
It can come true, because the business model you put in place is very, very smart, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. It's working now. It's still, it's still got to grow more, to be able to get to the point where I could really offer an experience like that. But, I'm having a great time doing it. Yeah, I think it's all sort of come full circle for me. When I started out, everything was this world of just experimentation and discovery, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about recording, And so every day I came in, it's like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try some new thing I heard about and see what that sounds like. Everything was just this cool experiment and discovery. And so I've sort of navigated back to that now. I started there, then spent 30 years, in a studio just cranking out recordings, and I'm grateful for all the experiences. I got to work with a bunch of amazing artists and, put out records that a lot of people got to hear, and all of that was amazing. There are challenges within that experience. When you have a band that's signed to a label and they have a manager and there's a schedule and they got to put out a record at a particular time, and the lead singer wants to sound like this and the A&R person wants it to sound like that. And like, you got to try and navigate all this stuff, and it can be challenging. And at the end of the day, it can erode at the opportunities to just make something that sounds incredible, And so there are compromises and choices you have to make along the way to accommodate all of these different forces that are pulling in different directions. And so now I've just put myself back in a position where the only focus is trying to make the most incredible sounding recordings. That's all I care about.
It's a great thing, and we will put all the links here in the description, of course, so people
cool.
I'm sure that our viewers already are know, but for those who don't know, we will put all the links here. And talking about
Cool.
compromise, you said in your latest interview with Rick Beato, which If
Mm.
you people didn't see it, go watch it because it's great. You said one thing that I would like you to expand on, because it's a great suggestion for all the young guys that want to do this job. You said that for a couple of years you recorded rap, hip hop
Mhm.
music, and then you found out that it's not what you want to do, and you stopped and you went back to do rock or any
Yeah.
kind of music that you like, organic music, anything you like. Can you expand on that, on doing what you like and not what it's supposed to do, because now the trend is this?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, um, the most valuable thing that you can do, with your time and your career is to do the thing that you're the most passionate about, because I think you'll you'll have the best chance of creating something of exceptional value. When you're really engaging in something that you would do whether somebody's paying you or not, and you just love doing it. It's all you think about when you wake up and you go to bed, and you're still thinking about, oh man, how am I going to get this sound? How am I going to do this? I love these. What was this chord progression? Like whatever it is, that is the thing that just you obsess over and love, and is so satisfying to dig into and understand and create with. That's the thing that I think you will be the best at and will have the most value ultimately, within whatever context it is. And it certainly proved to be true for myself. I was recording rap music just as a matter of convenience,
Yeah,
because I had a client that had an endless supply of work to do, paid well, and just kept the studio booked, and that was great. But I was never going to go beyond just making recordings for this particular client, and that I would just get paid by the hour to do that for the rest of my life.
yeah,
And it wasn't until I had to turn him away and turn that money down and go, you know what? I think it's smarter to do what I'm passionate about. And I made that transition. It was tough, very lean times. I was living off of microwave burritos out of a
yeah.
gas station.
We know,
But
we know how it works. Yeah,
yeah,
because
everybody's
we
been
did the
through that.
same. We did the same thing. That, but said by you has another importance. I mean, if it has a saying, okay, because you didn't make it, maybe.
Yeah.
But if you say so, it's important for all the young guys that want to have this as a career.
Yeah. And because of my passion and my obsession with recording really mostly rock music, I really had something of value to bring to
Yeah.
that world. And not long after that, I crossed paths with Smash Mouth, and I crossed paths with Third Eye Blind. And I made recordings, demo recordings with those bands that when they, landed on the desk of an A&R person at a record company, they were like, what is this? What is this sound? It was ear catching for people.
Yeah.
And, the transition was inevitable for me. And then here's the thing that I think is the additional thought that's important that I don't think I mentioned before. When you really do the thing that you're truly passionate about, that brings you joy, whether you're being paid for it or not, whether it's ultimately successful or not doesn't matter. It's a win-win. Like,
Yes,
even
it
if you
is.
spend your time doing that and you have these wonderful, fulfilling experiences of doing the thing that you just love to do and is so satisfying and fulfilling, hey, maybe it doesn't end up in a place where you end up, whatever, being a millionaire record producer, but at least along the way, you were doing something that you truly loved the whole time.
At least you're
Because,
happy.
yeah, there's no way to lose with that.
Yeah.
And if you try and chase trends and do stuff that isn't necessarily really what brings you joy in life, and you're just chasing money, particularly in the music business, like it's challenging to have, like a really successful career in music, either as a recording artist or a producer or a mixer or whatever. Especially now, there's so many people can do it. Anybody can do it on their laptop.
Yeah.
There's a million people out there that claim to be producers. Like, there's no filter. Everybody's doing it now. And so it's hard. It's hard to break through that. And so imagine you spend your time working on music that you don't necessarily really love, isn't your favorite thing. You end the day, finishing up, oh man, I really wish I was working on this or whatever. And you still don't break through and have it be a really successful career. Then you spent your time not doing what you love, and you still,
And
still
you don't
get a
even
great-
make it.
Yeah, like I don't,
Yeah.
I can't make sense of that approach.
Yeah.
It became clear to me early on, that was in the, early 90s, 93, 94, when I was like, I can't spend my life doing this, like, and I really enjoy rap music. I have nothing against rap music.
No, but yeah, of
Yeah.
course, but yeah.
And it's really about what speaks to your heart and soul and your true passion and fire in life. And I enjoy rap music, particularly the stuff that was happening in that era, like Snoop's Doggy Style record.
Yeah.
One of the greatest rap records of all time. I'll listen to that anytime. I love that record. But like when I would finish a full day of recording with this client, his name was, the artist was named Paris, and I'd go home, I put on Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
I wouldn't put on rap music and listen to that and be fully engaged and thinking about devouring that world of music all the time because it spoke to my soul, And so I'll never be as good as somebody like Dr. Dre at producing rap music because it doesn't speak to me that way,
Yeah, we perfectly understand because we feel the same way and we live the same way you're saying.
Yeah, got to do what you
Um,
love,
yeah, yeah. And just giving advice to young guys that want to start this job. You on the most from the list, which everybody can see on his website, and the link will be down here. You recorded with low budget stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay. What would you suggest a newcomer that wants to buy some stuff to start doing production and recording from the beginning, and he doesn't have a big budget, but he wants something that sounds good for the budget?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that like it's very doable now,
Yes.
If you can afford a laptop, that probably would be, one of the single most expensive purchases in the whole process. You definitely need a computer. You're going to need an audio interface. I would suggest if you want to record bands, I think you probably need an interface that will allow you to record 8 channels
Yes.
at one time. Any less than that would be really challenging, I would say. 4 channels starts to get really tough, if you're trying to record big rock drums and stuff like that. So interface with 8 channels, they're out there, they're not wildly expensive. I don't think you need dramatically expensive microphones. The collection of microphones that I was using to do the most from the least is a Behringer set of microphones. It costs $100 for 7 microphones. So in that collection, the dynamic microphones, so the ones that I put on the snare and the toms and the kick drum, work great. They work fine. Sure, there's microphones that probably sound a little better, but you can make those microphones sound like super powerful, aggressive, exciting rock drums if you want to do that, or really whatever style of music you're doing. They'll work. You can get them there for sure. They're close enough. Whatever the deficiencies are in them, you can make up for it with good EQ choices and skill. Like I will always maintain the tools are never as important as how they're used. It's like the choices you make where you put the mic, how you tune the drum, what kind of amp you have, how you have it set, how you mic the cabinet, how you EQ things, how you compress things. Those choices matter so much more than the tools that you're using. And so, you can definitely get a setup for a very affordable amount of money and make great recordings, make stuff that sounds like a record. I'm sure of it.
Where would you put the most money? The speakers, the tuning of the room, the vocal mic, the preamp?
Yeah, I mean, I would go for definitely treating your room, your listening environment, I think is very important. And so, I had the benefit of that with my most Middle East thing. So, this was a room that had tons of acoustic treatment on all the walls.
And everybody can see it on your videos that
you can see what I did in that particular space. I did a different approach in the space that I have now. You can see all these big tubes everywhere.
Yeah.
Both of them worked, and there's ways to do it. And there's now very affordable, I would say much more affordable sources of acoustic treatment products and materials now that you can buy. I bought my stuff from a website called, I think, Acoustics First or something like that. And they make these panels that you can put up on the wall. They're 4 to 6 inches thick. I don't know how they can make them as cheap as they do. If I built them myself, I couldn't make them that cheap, And so, I think that is important to try and get the room so it's not this bouncy, ringy, inaccurate listening space. Definitely, you got to get a decent pair of headphones to listen on. I don't think they need to be crazy expensive like these new, whatever, planar magnetic. I don't know, forget the name of them.
ODs. I don't know how they say.
Yeah, Audio Ease or Hi-Fi Man. I'm sure they work great. I tried a pair of those. I just use a pair of let's see, they're all out in the sound room right now, but a pair of Audio-Technica M50s. They work great.
Yeah.
I
use them to track.
With any of these, you just have to learn them anyways. And so whether it's the most expensive Audio Ease headphones or Audio-Technica M50s, you just got to spend time working on them. And listening to mixes that you love, and then switch to your mix and see what's different and see how it feels in the headphones. Headphones are great for all of the excuse me, mid-range and high frequency tone shaping. The low end gets a little harder to do, in headphones. That's where I like to listen to some speakers. But yeah, so, I would say headphones, you can get, 70, 80, 90% there. And it's really, the speakers for me are really just about listening to the low end. And there's something about pushing low end through a speaker into the room, and even on smaller speakers, because I have a large pair of monitors in here that are the only speakers I listen to now. They're great. I love them. They're incredibly accurate. There's only one thing that they don't do that I think is valuable on smaller near field monitors. There's a thing that happens when you turn up into small speakers that are sort of at the limit of their ability to play back the volume that you're asking them to play, and they start to crap out. It can be very revealing about whether your low end is right or not. Like the speakers that I have in here, they'll play back anything I throw at them, whether the low end's good or not. They'll take
which speakers are they?
They're called Strauss Electroacoustic, and I have the MF 2.1s. They're large format monitors. They're unbelievable what they do, and so the only thing they don't do is crap out at a certain point and let me know if there's something inefficient or out of balance in the low end that causes the low frequency drivers to start to crap out before they should, And so, so I don't know. I might put some smaller speakers in here just for that reason, but also, it's really just a matter of learning these speakers. And anytime I A/B back and forth and listen to these, I can always hear what's going on and make adjustments,
and to learn the speakers and to learn your headphones and stuff, you suggest to listen to reference tracks, and I still
Absolutely.
thank you for the Audio Slave Show Me How to Live, because
Oh
now
yeah,
it's
I
one
love
of
that one.
my number one reference track.
Oh, good.
Since the
Yeah.
time you said it 2 or 3 years ago, I don't even remember where you said it, but it's incredible.
Amazing mix.
And since I know you talk to Rich Costi sometimes, tell him that he did really a great job
Yeah,
on that one.
I'll pass that on. I've had opportunities to tell him myself. In fact, we had a gathering here once the studio was all done. He also lives and works in Vermont now,
Yeah.
and so he came and we got to hang out together a little bit. And I got to have him sit down in this seat and listen to that mix on these speakers.
Yeah.
It was really fun. And he said an interesting thing after listening to it. He said, I haven't heard that mix sound like that since I listened to it on Rick Rubin's monitoring system when I first finished the mix.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. He enjoyed the experience, and we had a great chat about it. And I asked him, like, what did you do on that mix? He's like, I don't know. I was just mixing. It was just another thing to mix at the time. I was just just doing my best to make it sound good, and it just turned out really cool. Whatever.
It sounds incredible. That song sounds incredible. He did a great job also on the last Deftones records.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. I love his work.
He is incredible.
Yeah.
But you also, since you love so much all this stuff, and you are a nerd, as we are. This is the Audio Nerd Show.
Yeah.
You started to make your own stuff.
Yes.
And you started a company, Ultratone, Undertone Audio. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Talking about the blanks. Undertone Audio. And you started to make your own stuff. And I remember on the video we were talking about on Pensado's Place that you had your console there, and you talking about the material you did on the surface for the comping, the comp filtering and stuff. But you were trying to make a drum Motown drum sound with one mic.
Yeah.
And you used your EQ, and I was, no, how can we do? I want that EQ. Can you tell how that EQ evolved and became what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So it was, I was at a crossroads with large format recording consoles. I'd used Neve consoles for a long time. It was first an 8038 that had 32 1081s in it. It was a beautiful classic Neve console, 80 series console. Then I switched to an 8128, which had flying faders automation. It had 56 channels. That was really the console where I was able to really pin down skills as a mixer, to be able to mix stuff, because I had the channels and the automation to work with to really be able to hone those skills. And then that console kind of just was at the end of its lifespan. I just couldn't keep it working anymore. So I got rid of that, and I got a Neve 88R, the most expensive piece of audio anything I'd ever bought in my life. And sadly did not love that thing. It was a great console, but it was just so huge and had so many things in it that I didn't really need. And, it wasn't for me. And so at that point, I was like, then what do I do? Like, what do I get? And so, I had this gentleman that was fixing all the audio equipment in my studio, and he was just impossibly brilliant with audio circuitry, and had worked for the company Quad 8 building consoles before. And so I decided very naively, like, well, let's just build a console, And it was, took a lot longer than I thought. It was a lot harder than I thought. But it took a few years, but we finally got there. And so by the end of 2009, I believe, is when the first one was up and running. And the equalizer, it was kind of a long journey, but and it was a lot of me just learning about different EQ technologies, how they derived the shapes, the ways to do that, the type of circuitry that was used in order to be able to do that. My issue with most of the consoles is that, like I just said about the API, it's a nice sounding console, but it's not a very surgical EQ. And so there were definitely times when I need to be able to create and manufacture and transform this sound from this into something else. And I need a very, very powerful EQ to do it. And at the time, we didn't have plug-in EQs like FabFilter Q4, where you can turn anything into anything. That didn't exist, in 2009. And there were really no EQs that would do really crazy transformative stuff. And so it was an opportunity to do that. And what I wanted is I want to have a console where every single channel has this EQ in it that can just do anything I need it to, and have it also be really musical, classic, vintage type, circuitry in that thing, all Class A discrete circuitry. And so this guy was able to do that. He was able to design that EQ. So it's a 4-band equalizer, and the most unique thing about it is that instead of having a switch for each band where you could switch from a shelf shape to a peak shape, it has a knob that blends between a peak shape or a shelf shape. And the Q control, so the thing that determines how narrow or wide the EQ move is, stays active when you're in any combination of a peak or a shelf shape. And so those two knobs together allow you to do really wild, extreme EQ shapes with one band that would normally take 2 or 3 bands to do. And so it just, with a 4-band parametric EQ, it gave me a huge amount of control and power, transformative power, to be able to transform sounds from one thing into another thing, and be able to really surgically address things. If there was, in a guitar sound, one just really annoying, awful, ringy overtone, this thing got super surgical. I could go and tweeze that thing out and turn it down and rebalance the harmonics of a guitar sound, that kind of thing. And I had it on every channel. It was incredible to finally have that, because I used to have to go to other EQs. I couldn't use the console EQs, go to a rack behind me and make adjustments on like a GML, EQ, or I have these Orban parametric EQs that could get really surgical, so I'd have to use those to do that stuff. And it was just kind of my dream to have that just built into a console. And so that EQ is still, I would say, the most powerful analog EQ ever built. There's nothing like it. There's nothing does anything like it. Even FabFilter 4 doesn't have the feature where you can blend between a peak shape and a shelf shape. So it's a feature that's very, very unique to that EQ. There's now a 500 series version of it that you can get. It's 3 bands, but it's, 3 bands of all of that same power and control,
And you then made the famous Unfairchild.
Yep, that happened along the way. We were happily, rolling along, making, products that were really based on very innovative circuitry that hadn't been done before. So like the equalizer, the mic preamp is very unique. It is a Class A circuit that's as efficient as a Class AB amplifier, and so you can squeeze it in places where you normally couldn't. And it also is designed to be able to bypass both the transformers, either input or output transformers. So you can have transformers on input and output, or one or the other, or none at all. And Class A transformerless is also a thing that's never really been available before or now. Nobody else does that. And, so it's a very, very flexible tool. So you can have a bunch of transformer color, you can drive it. It sounds this beautiful, Class A, discrete, very musical.
You have attack and release.
Yeah, type of preamp. Or if you want it to sound pristine, it is the clearest, cleanest, most pristine sound you've ever heard when you run this thing transformerless for recording like an orchestra or a jazz recording or something like that. It's absolutely magical and stuff like that.
And you have also a new compressor coming out.
We have a new compressor coming that we're working on. This is based on a very unique type of compressor technology. It's called pulse width modulation. Really, really odd. It's like, I just wish I was in the room when the person showed up, with this idea, going like, yeah, let's modulate the audio with this super high frequency, like 250,000 hertz in a square wave, and then we'll make it narrower or wider to turn up the volume or down, And it's like, what are you talking about? It's just such an insane proposition. But it's a really, really cool way to do it. And it works amazing. It's really cool.
And the last question, because we are stealing your morning, because it's morning for you. Just briefly, your mixing technique right now is hybrid, right?
Yeah.
How much hardware, how much software you put hardware on the buses? How's your just the routing?
Yeah. It's really interesting. I feel myself evolving in two directions with mixing. There's definitely a version of it that is entirely in the box. There are times where that feels really the most effective and I get the best results the quickest, just mixing entirely in the box. And then there are some things where I use much more of the analog stuff. And it's just, I get to the end goal faster using those tools, and then there can be any combination in between. And this setup really affords the flexibility to be able to do that in whatever combination suits the song or the project. The thing that I'm on now, it's really just more inspiring and funner to mix more in the box. And the results have been way better, for some reason. And then I recently did the most from the most thing where, I revisited a mix that was originally all in the box, but did it with, almost all analog gear. And I felt like the results were much better and it was quicker for me to get there. That was something where it's a style of mixing that I had done a lot, over the years. And there are very specific, techniques and tools that I know will deliver the results that I want. So it's fast. I'm gonna take the snare, I'm gonna put it through this thing, and I'm gonna do that, and it's gonna sound like the thing, Yeah. And so it's very effective for those types of things. And so it's a combination of both. I love this setup because I have the essentials of the busing structure that I have settled on for mixing that seems to be able to accommodate any type of music or genre or song I'm working on, where I have a drum bus, a music bus, the drum bus will collapse into the music bus. There's a vocal bus, and then those two collapse together into a final mix bus. So there's 4 stereo buses, 8 channels of busing. And, it's just a passive summing mixer that has dedicated inputs for each one of those buses. And, there's like 10 channels for the drums. I think there's 10 channels for the music bus. There's only 4 channels for the vocals, just stereo lead vocals, stereo background vocals. And then obviously the final mix bus is just 2 channels. And, I can decide what kind of analog mixer summing I want to use for the project. I can, it's a passive summing mixer. So each one of those summing stages, each one of those buses, you have to make up the gain from the passive resistive summing that happens. And so I can use all Neve preamps, and then it sounds like a Neve console. I can use all Undertone preamps, and it sounds like an Undertone console. I can use all vintage RCA tube preamps, and it sounds like a it really sounds like a 1950s RCA console, you know? So the flexibility there is really cool. That was probably the only thing about the Undertone console when I started to really, you know, live with that thing was like, there are times where I would like to have a different sound than this. Like, this is a great sound and I love it, but it may not be the best sound for everything I'm doing. And it would be cool if I could change this sound. And that's kind of hard to do when you have this giant, expensive, you know, large format console sitting in front of you that just does what it does. It does one thing, you know, I'm sure it does it well, but sometimes it's not the right thing.
Cool. Eric, thanks a lot. Is there anything that we can talk about that you are working on and we can talk about, or you want to talk about, or any project that we're expecting?
Sure. You know, right now we're, you know, I'm sort of in crisis mode trying to finish another record with Grace Potter, who happens to be my wife.
Yes.
And
incredible singer.
Yeah, an amazing recording artist. And
Yes.
so this will be the fourth record that we will make together. And we've got a bunch of stuff there. It's just been, we're both got a million things going on. It's like trying to find time to just get in there and get focused and stay on it is super challenging, you know, when it's like there's audio companies and our son and, you know, this and trying to make videos and she's got a million things going on, you know, it's just, it's just hard to find time to get stuff done.
Yes.
But so that's going on right now. I just filmed a thing for the analog tape company RTM asked me to do a review of their tape formulas, and which I was happy to do because I've used different tape formulas a lot over the years, but it was always in a very sort of, you know, unscientific way, sort of cavalier way, where I go, you know what, on this project, let's try whatever, GP9 instead of, you know, Quantity 456 and see how that goes, you know? And I'd record a whole record with GP9 and go, well, that was cool. And I never really sat down and like really compared like exactly back to back with, you know, really detailed measurements. What measures different in testing with these different tape formulas? Are you really getting all of these extra dynamics that they claim with this high level tape? How does that actually manifest and how this thing reacts to having signals sent to it? And how does it sound? Because I never really did the thing of like calibrating a tape machine up with a particular tape formula and recording something with it, and then calibrating it up with a different tape formula and recording the exact identical thing on that tape and see if how different it sounds, you know, because it was always on different projects or a different thing, you know, and you'd have sort of a vague sense of like, oh yeah, this high level tape seems punchier, but how do you really know if it's just a whole other project, you know, all different songs, different players, different everything else, you know? So I do that. And I really spent a couple days really digging into this and got some interesting results that I was not expecting.
And we will see it on Audio Now Sound, right?
Yeah, this one is it'll definitely be available on Audionaut, but I'm sort of doing this on behalf of the RTM Record the Master, you know, tape company. So this is going to be more of like a public service thing. And so it'll be on YouTube. The whole thing will be on YouTube for free. So,
really the last small thing.
Sure.
Is it possible that you played piano on a Joe Satriani album produced by Glyn Jones?
Let's see.
Because I saw piano, Eric Valentine. I said, I don't think there is another one.
It's very possible that they used some piano that I played. So what happened on that project, I started that project. And at a certain point, it just fell apart. I couldn't finish it. It's sort of a longer story. But and then the person that replaced me to record that record was Glyn Johns.
Glyn Johns, yeah.
And I did ultimately get to go, like, when the project fell apart, it really wasn't under bad terms. Joe and I are still great friends. You know, he's awesome. I love him. And we just agreed, like, we're just not going to get this thing done, you know?
Okay.
And so, you know, I was more than happy to have him go off and record with Glenn Johns, you know, like who wouldn't want to do that? And so I actually got to go and hang out for a couple of days while he was recording with Glenn Johns, which was a very, very cool experience. And so it's very possible that
there are some tracks from the previous recordings went on the record, and they
may have used something from that.
Yeah.
And you know, you know, that opportunity to make a record with Joe started because I reworked a song that was left over from his Surfing with the Alien album, this song called Time, which ended up getting released on the Crystal Planet album.
Yeah.
So you can hear that song. And so that song was basically just me and Joe Satriani, because I took that recording, I really only kept the guitars. I replaced the drums, bass, I added percussion, dulcimer, some sound effects, stuff like that. And
you played everything.
And I played all of that stuff. And so then the idea was that we would make a record that was just him and I. You know, he would play guitar, I'd play bass and drums and whatever. Because playing the bass and drums was a lot of what I did on the T-Ride record. I also played a lot of guitar on the T-Ride record, but you know, that was a role that I was comfortable doing. It didn't ultimately work out with Joe's thing, and you know, he ended up going sort of the opposite direction. Instead of like puzzle piecing this record together with just two people, he recorded it totally live with Glenn Johns, like the opposite approach. You know, it was really cool. And so, but yeah, cool experience. And then I think in his box set, he released some of the unfinished versions of the stuff that we had going, because we got pretty far in the process of the version of that record that we did. And I think some of those versions were really cool.
I will search for them.
Yeah, there's a box set. They're out there. Yeah, there's you can hear a version that I did of the song Luminous Flesh Giants with me doing my very, very best John Bonham imitation on the drums. There's a really cool... What's that?
Your preferred band is Led Zeppelin, and I guess...
That's probably my biggest influence. Yeah, for sure.
And John Bonham is your favorite drummer?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Is there anybody that John Bonham is not the favorite drummer in the world?
Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, for rock drummers, I mean, I've been checking out more, you know, modern, you know, sort of like the current sort of A-list of drummers now, and drumming has evolved so much, you know, in the last, whatever, 20 years, something like that. I can't believe what people are able to play on drums now. It's really astonishing what people can do.
Technically.
Yeah, just technically what they're able to do.
Yes.
And I think a lot of them, you know, many of them have amazing feel and all of that stuff. It's just, you know, there's a lot of incredible musicians. Just for me and my taste, like his approach to playing, tuning, how the drums speak in the room, just the whole thing was like, that's what drums should sound like, you know? Yes. I just love it.
Yes, me too. Eric, thanks a lot for this, because it's been incredible. And
my pleasure. Yeah, I really enjoy, you know, chatting with you about all this stuff, you know, great questions, and just I love hearing your thoughts and perspective on things as well.
I say goodbye in Italian, and then we say goodbye.
Ok, cool. Sounds good.
Ragazzi, è stato incredibile. Ringraziamo Eric perché è stato pazientissimo con tutte le mie domande. Sapete che io non smetto mai. Io sarei andato avanti altre 5 ore, ma non si può. Quindi ringraziamo tantissimo Eric. Andy, cosa dici? È stata una figata.
È stata una figata. Grazie mille Eric, e noi ci vediamo nel prossimo video.
Ciao a
tutti.
Ciao.